What if time itself is the veil and clarity waits in silence? Where thought and presence meet. This is the Thin Line Channel. We commonly think of time as something measured, the ticking of a clock, the swirl of seasons, the aging body. But what if time is not a neutral backdrop, but an inner movement, one propelled by thought? What if what we feel as time is psychological motion, the echo of memory and projection?
Exactly. Krishnamurti taught that psychological time is inseparable from thought. It's not that thought uses time. It is time. When the mind regrets, anticipates, hopes, or fears, it's stepping into psychological time. And when the mind thinks, it constructs images of me, of what was and what will be, images that can only exist in time, not in the vivid now.
So the image we have of ourselves, crafted from memory and desire, is time. It is identity wrapped in story, a projection of the past reaching for the future. What happens then when we see that image, not suppressing it, but seeing it as it arises and then letting it go?
We touch clarity. The mind that registers the image without continuing is free. It doesn't hold onto the self, and that freedom is not an intellectual point. It's a quality of perception. In that moment, there's no observing self, only observation. That's where psychological time ends, even if the clock keeps ticking.
The present, how elusive it can seem. Clarity isn't a point between two shadows. It's dimensionless. It cannot be held or continued. It simply is. To step into the present is to step outside the chronology of memory. But how do we do that in a mind conditioned to continue?
Awareness begins that way, by seeing thought without becoming it, observing the movement of thought as if from outside. Slowly, that observer dissolves. First, you see that thought is continuity. Then, continuity itself is seen. But in pure seeing, there is no thinker and no thought. There is silence.
Silence, not empty, but full. Not the absence of sound, but the quiet field in which sound appears. If sound is an arrow, silence is the space through which it flies. And that space, thought-free and timeless, is what traditions call ether.
Ether is often misunderstood as a mystical element. It's not a substance. It's presence without form. The field, not the object. Stillness that makes movement visible. Without ether, fire, air, water, and earth cannot be distinguished. They swirl together. With ether, clarity arises.
So ether is not separate. It is the ground, not an object to reach, but the presence uncovered when the dreaming mind falls silent. How do we experience ether? How do we live from awareness rather than through projection?
By ending the self, not in violent negation, but by seeing the self's mechanics. The self is thought plus image, what commonly referred to as me. When attention remains whole and observing, the self is no longer constructed, and you are left with presence.
That presence is not something you become. It's what remains when all becoming stops. And in that presence, there is resonance. Not thought, not analysis, but harmony. It is clarity that not only sees, but is seen.
Distortion is the whisper of self. It's memory, desire, comparison, fear, all layered upon perception. Resonance is the harmonics of silence. When there is no center, no filter, perception is whole.
like a mirror polished until it reflects without color or curve. Yet even a spotless mirror reflects what stands before it. In that way, the world appears not as distorted illusion, but as revelation.
And in that seeing, time begins to lose its hold. We no longer perceive the duration of events. We perceive presence. As Krishnamurti said, be a light unto yourself, not through becoming bright, but through being clear.
Clear enough to listen, not as something you do, but as what you are. Attention without center. A paradox perhaps, but the only kind of attention that gives space to truth.
Ordinary attention is divided. It's focused. But undivided attention cannot be trained. It emerges when there is no one attending. That is silence in action.
Let's connect this back to body and being. Our bodies measure time. Heartbeat, breath, cellular aging. The body exists in time. Yet awareness resides also in the body. Can we inhabit both without identifying?
We can. The body is the present made flesh. But the identification with the body arises through memory. The story of I am this body. But awareness is prior. It was there in infancy before that story solidified. It will be there as the body ages. Awareness is not bound to form.
So identification is addiction to memory. The womb of identity is memory, layered like rings in a tree. But when the mind stops recollecting as the self, memory remains useful, but no longer binding.
Exactly. Memory holds experiences. But when there's no self to define you through memory, memories become like books on a shelf. Present, but not defining.
And without memory identifying you, there is clarity, there is perception, there is light. Not light of an idea, but of seeing.
Which brings us back to motion. Again, from illusion to reality. Motion is stitched by memory. Without memory, there's only perception, and not necessarily of motion. Motion may appear, but there is no mover. That's presence.
Presence that is also light. Light that is not reflected, but is light itself. And that light needs no confirmation. It simply is.
Thoughts may arise. Impermanence, fear, joy, but they arise as phenomena within presence. They do not define presence.
So listening to thought, watching it arise without attachment, that is meditation. Not as practice, but as boundaryless living.
Presence needs no techniques. Presence is the mind uncovered, not constructed.
And in that presence, there is freedom. Not freedom from laws or from suffering, but freedom from the self that thinks it's bound.
And that freedom is not an achievement. It is recognition of what already is.
This is why Krishnamurti said that to know something is to be it. Not intellectually, but in total clarity. Because awareness cannot be separated from knowing.
And so, the journey ends where it began. Not in struggle, but in silence.
Silence that is not empty, but full of listening.
Full of presence.
Full of ether.
The element of elements.
The canvas of movement.
The light behind time.
The clarity behind distortion.
The stillness that holds motion.
This is the ether of now. If this stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Subscribe to the Thin Line channel where thought and presence meet. And if this is your first time here, there's more waiting. Explore the other videos on the channel and follow the thread further.